The Mazda CX-5 has always been the brand's bread and butter, but 2026 brings a redesign that shakes up everything from styling to tech. So the question is, does the new CX-5 take a real step forward, or is the 2025 model still the smarter buy? Hello everyone, this is Scott from CarlandTV. It's time to hop in the front seat because today we're stacking the all-new 2026 Mazda CX-5 against the 2025 model to see which one really earns your money and which one's better left on the lot. But first, do me a quick favor. Tap that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. It ain't required, but those clicks keep this thing rolling and make it easier for me to keep dropping solid car content straight to your screen. Now, let's get back into it. Exterior design and dimension. Alright, cards on the table. Park the 2026 CX-5 next to the 2025, and you can spot the redesign from across the lot. Mazda stretched the new one by about 4.5 inches overall and says the wheelbase grows by roughly 4.5 inches too. Well, exact figures are still coming, but the stance already reads longer, lower, and more planted. Up front, the 2026 wears a sharper face, slimmer LED headlamps, a wider, more sculpted fascia, and gloss black trim framing the grille, lower valance, wheel arches, and side skirts. Out back, Mazda ditches the roundel for Mazda lettering across the tailgate, tucks in slimmer, darker tie lamps, think CX-70, CX-90 vibe, and keeps dual exhaust outlets to underline the sporty posture. Now, a quick reality check on the 2025 CX-5, so you've got a baseline. It's classic Kodo clean, tight, and upscale, but it's more compact at 180.1 inches long with a 106.2-inch wheelbase. Looks great, drives great, but those shorter dimensions are part of why rear seat and cargo space trail class leaders. The 2026's extra length is not just for show, it's there to open up the cabin and give the profile a more premium Mini CX-90 feel. Detail nerds, you'll notice the 2026's slimmer DRL signature and the way the bumper and grille now tie together with fewer visual breaks, less chrome jewelry, more sculpted surface. The black cladding is purposeful rather than bulky, and the whole truck reads wider even before we have final width numbers. Bottom line, the 2026 CX-5 looks bolder and sits better on the road, and that stretch sets up the big story inside, more room where families actually feel it. Let's hop into the cocoon of the new CX-5 and see how much Mazda really unlocks. Interior space and comfort. Step inside, and here's where the 2026 CX-5 really starts pulling away from the 2025 model. Mazda stretched the body and wheelbase for a reason, and you feel it the second you climb into the back seat. They're promising class-leading second-row knee and legroom, and that extra 4.5 inches of length pays off with a more natural, chair-like seating position instead of the knees-to-chest vibe you sometimes get in the 2025. The taller greenhouse also opens things up visually, letting in more light and giving the cabin that airy feel buyers in this class want. Cargo space hasn't been finalized yet, but early reports show a meaningful bump compared to the 2931 cubic feet you get in the 2025, which always felt a little tight versus a CR-V or RAV4. The 2025 CX-5, to be fair, is still one of the nicest cabins in the segment. Nappa leather on higher trims, real wood accents, and a cockpit layout that leans premium. But the trade-off was always rear passenger room. Adults could fit, but not comfortably for long hauls, and Mazda heard that complaint loud and clear. Inside the 2026, the design language goes cleaner and more modern. You'll notice a new flatter steering wheel hub with simplified controls, a sleeker dual-tone color scheme, and the Mazda name spelled out right on the wheel, mirroring the rear badging. It feels more like a scaled-down CX-90 than a refreshed 2025. So if the outside growth gave this SUV a bolder stance, the inside upgrades make it genuinely livable for families. And that's before we even touch the massive tech overhaul, which is exactly where I'm heading next. Technology and infotainment. Here's the thing. If there's one area where the 2026 CX-5 completely outclasses the 2025 model, it's tech. The old car wasn't bad. Every 2025 CX-5 came with a 10.3-inch infotainment screen, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and Mazda connected services. But let's be real. That screen sat high on the dash, touch inputs were limited, and Mazda forced you to use a rotary dial most of the time. It felt sharp for 2017, but by 2025, it was lagging behind rivals that offered bigger, touch-first systems. Mazda clearly took notes, because the 2026 CX-5 steps up with an available 15.6-inch touchscreen, the biggest display Mazda has ever dropped in a production car. Even the standard unit, a 12.9-inch screen, is a huge jump. The best part? It runs Google built-in, meaning you get Google Maps, Google Assistant, and the Play Store baked right in without fumbling through your phone. Of course, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are still standard, so no one's locked out. On top of that, every trim gets a fully digital instrument cluster, finally retiring the old analog speedo and touch that hung around in the 2025. The cabin design reflects that change too. Mazda ditched the rotary infotainment knob entirely, letting the big screen take center stage. The steering wheel also gets slimmer controls and a flatter airbag hub for a sleeker, more modern look. So yeah, the 2025 CX-5 still feels classy, but the 2026 is the one that feels future-proof. And that shift matters, especially when you start stacking it against competitors like the CR-V and RAV4. But tech isn't everything, so let's move to the part drivers really care about. Powertrain and driving dynamics. Alright, let's get into the meat of it, because this is where Mazda fans are either nodding along or throwing up their coffee. The 2026 CX-5 shows up looking sharp, stretched out, and teched up, but under the hood, same old story. It's still rocking the 2.5-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder with 187 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque, tied to the 6-speed auto and standard all-wheel drive. Don't get me wrong, it's a solid, reliable setup. Smooth, predictable, gets the job done. But when you line it up against rivals that are going hybrid only, it feels like Mazda's hanging on to yesterday a little too long. They're promising their own in-house hybrid for 2027, but that's still a year out. Now, to be fair, the 2025 CX-5 had something the 2026 doesn't, and that's the turbo. And that wasn't just a nice to have. That 2.5-liter turbo cranked out 256 horsepower and 320 pound-feet of torque, and when you mash the throttle, you could rip 0 to 60-inch 6.2 seconds. That's legit quick for a compact SUV. It gave the CX-5 this sneaky sport wagon vibe. Tight steering, planted chassis, and enough torque to make passing on the highway feel easy. So yeah, the 2026 is refined, comfortable, and smooth. But if you're the kind of driver who loves the old turbo trims, you're gonna miss that shove in the back. Mazda's betting buyers care more about space and comfort than speed right now. Which brings me to the bigger picture, how the trims and features line up, and whether the new CX-5 is still worth the stretch on your wallet. Features, trims, and pricing. Here's where things get interesting, because Mazda's shaking up how they're packaging the CX-5. The 2025 model gave you a buffet of trims, 8 total, starting with the base S at $30,200 and climbing up to the turbo signature at $42,300. That lineup lets you pick your flavor. Carbon Edition with red stitching and black wheels, Premium Plus with surround view cameras, and of course, the turbo trims if you want power with luxury. It was one of the reasons the CX-5 stayed competitive so long. You could dial in exactly the mix of style, tech, and performance you wanted. Now, with the 2026 CX-5, Mazda hasn't dropped all the details yet, but we know a few things. For starters, all-wheel drive is still standard across the board, so that piece of value stays. The rotary infotainment controller is gone, replaced by touchscreens only, which will be standard even on lower trims. The base model is expected to carry the new 12.9-inch screen, while upper trims will grab the big 15.6-inch Google-powered unit. A fully digital instrument cluster will also be standard, which is a big jump over the 2025's mixed analog setup. Pricing hasn't been officially announced, but with all the added tech and a bigger body, expect the 2026 CX-5 to start slightly higher than the 2025's $30 Kelvin entry point. Word is Mazda wants to keep it competitive against the CR-V and RAV4, so don't expect sticker shock, but the turbo trims are gone, meaning your high-end money now buys you space, tech, and style instead of extra horsepower. And that sets up the big question. With all these shifts, what's my take on the new CX-5? So, is the 2026 Mazda CX-5 worth buying? So here's the straight truth. Both versions of the CX-5 are solid, but they're aimed at slightly different buyers. The 2025 CX-5 is the driver's pick. It's smaller, tighter, and with the available turbocharged engine, it's got the punch and handling that make it one of the most engaging crossovers in the class. It still holds its own with upscale materials and pricing that undercuts some luxury rivals. The downside? Rear seats and cargo space are on the tighter side, and it's showing its age against fresher competitors. The 2026 CX-5, on the other hand, shifts the focus. Mazda listened to customers and gave it a bigger cabin, class-leading rear legroom, a huge jump in tech with that 15.6-inch touchscreen, and a more premium design inside and out. For families or buyers who want a stylish, refined, tech-forward daily driver, the 2026 is objectively the better choice. But Mazda pulled the turbo engine off the table, and that's a big loss for enthusiasts. At launch, you're stuck with the same 187 horsepower 2.5-liter engine that's been around forever, and the promised hybrid doesn't arrive until 2027. So is the 2026 CX-5 worth buying? If space, comfort, and modern tech are at the top of your list, yes, it's a big step forward and positions itself strongly against the CR-V and RAV4. But if you care about performance and value the extra muscle of the turbo, the 2025 turbo trims might be the smarter buy while they're still available.